Welcome to Matters of Decorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Devin on the futon in the background, waving but behind my head so you can't see her. This has been a long time coming. I've done some of my +1 top 10 lists, and it's time for me to bite the bullet and make some hard choices. And here is my +1 top 10 list of my favorite role-playing games, with some honorable mentions. This hurt. I love a lot of role-playing games. I mean, in impure fashions. I have been a passionate follower of this hobby for a very long time, and so I got a lot of books back there. They're all going to get moved to another spot for rearranging the office and doing some stuff. But in the meantime, I'm going to start with my honorable mentions. Now, there's kind of an order to this. You don't really need to take them as one is better than the other. It's just my personal preferences, which I understand are my personal preferences. There's no real objective scoring system I use to rank these things. This is just kind of how they ended up. Honorable mention number 5. Original Black and Red Box Traveler. My first role-playing game purchase ever was White Box Dungeons & Dragons First Edition. But then my dad took me downtown St. Louis to a science fiction-based gaming store. I didn't know such a thing existed. And this game called to me. I didn't understand it. The system is still kind of, well, it's not as clear as it could be. Beginning days of role-playing games and systems are still kind of based on war games and whatnot. But Game Designers Workshop, Traveler, the first, the best. Okay, the first. Number 4, honorable mention. Original Edition Feng Shui. This game has so much. It's based on a card game called Shadow Fist. But as this is a game of Hong Kong action cinema and weird fantasy and horror elements and dimension hopping. It's a microcosm of everything that I kind of love in gaming, and it's all based around narrative and description. The system is simple and flowing, and I haven't played nearly enough of this. I had to run more of it than I played. I wish I'd had a chance to just throw down with some more kung fu. There are later editions than this. I haven't really looked at them because sometimes later edition doesn't really fix much. This game was not perfect when it came out, and I still, to this day, think it's one of the best things that ever came out. Honorable mention number 3. Toon. The game of cartoon role-playing, and this is the Warner Brothers, Tom and Jerry, Bugs Bunny style of role-playing games. It introduced concepts in role-playing I didn't know were possible. Steve Jackson Games, again, absolutely amazing writing, and just bonkers, nutso. I've had really wonderful games of Toon. I've had really awful games of Toon, but I've had nothing in between. Lots and lots of experiences, some really good, some really bad, nothing boring. Honorable mention, number 4. I've talked about this book before. This is the core book of 4th edition World of Darkness. The individual books for the Mage and Vampire and Werewolf and Prometheus, those are okay books, but this book has a special place in my heart because you can run anything out of here. It's a system that is simple and elegant, and everything you need to play is right in here, and you can do just about anything with it. And that's one of the reasons I just love it. It's thin. It's not very detailed or heavy, and it's okay because they sacrificed all of that for flow. And yeah. You can introduce monsters later on, or you can come up with something straight out of here. It is so good at presenting the core of a role-playing system and just being that basic ground level, here's a guy and here's how stuff works. One of my favorites. Honorable mention number 1, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Now, it's weird that Dungeons and Dragons would be in the honorable mention category. It's the only D&D book, and there's no other editions in the other pile. I'm not a fantasy gamer. I am running a D&D game right now in this edition, and it is one of the most entertaining things I've ever done, and I love the game, and I love the group, and it's an amazing campaign. I'm really enjoying it. It's not super my cup of tea. I can run it. I can play it. It's fine. But fantasy games have to be something absolutely and utterly spectacular, over the top, to be something that really grabs me. This comes as close as anything ever has. Now we get to my top 10, my actual top 10. These are my top 10 because when I look back at that bookshelf every so often and just let my eyes coast over the titles, these are the ones where I stop. These are the ones where I take a few minutes to remember the times and the games and the adventures, and sometimes pull the book out to look at the art or to reread a particular passage again. These are the books that grabbed me and hold me. Not just when I got them, not just when I saw them in the store, but to this day. Number 10. Rifts. The greatest role-playing game that no one ever plays. A product of Palladium Books, and oh my god, I love kitchen sink games, and this is the kitchen sink game. Post-apocalyptic world where rifts have opened up to every alternate dimension, and Earth is stormed by monsters and robots and aliens of all sorts, and you got powered armor and necromancers, and it all works together. And if the Palladium system was a more usable role-playing, it's functional, it's just not fun. But the material in these books, the artwork and the writing and the background is so friggin' engaging that I keep going back. I'll make a Rift character just to look at it, just to imagine what it could do. I'll compare it to some. I've got there are dozens of Rifts books, all of them packed full of an ever-increasing amount of armor and weapons that do just stupid huge amounts of damage. There is a new edition of Rifts being done in the Savage Worlds system, which I intend to dig into and see how that works out, because if this is presented in a better system, I might spend a little bit more time in this particular world. Love it. Number 9. In Nomine. I'm proud of this book. I am proud of this particular book because it is signed by Steve Jackson himself. I ran the first game of this role-playing game, the first session, at a convention in Los Angeles, ever at the Strategicon conventions, and I did not realize it until halfway into my game, but Steve Jackson was one of the players at my table. And he liked the game. Thanks for a good run. You play angels or demons. It's a self-contained game with its own self-contained system that is narrative and flowing and works really well. It is a system that would not work very well for other genres, but it is its own thing. It's one of those games where the genre and the system and the story all are interconnected. You couldn't really break it apart into different things. They tried to make a GURPS Nominee, but it was ridiculously complicated, and this did it so much better. You work for one of a number of archangels or demon princes, and this game is so good. I ran a tournament. Me and two friends of mine ran an Innomine tournament at the convention, Strategicon conventions. And, well, there was supposed to be a demon-based game and an angel-based game, and neither of the other two guys felt comfortable running a demon-based game. So I said, okay, I'll run the demon-based games. We'll put 3 demon-based games in the tournament, 3 demon-based, 3 angel-based, and then we'll throw them together for a final. And so I ran 3 demon-based Innomine games. I had nightmares. I had horrific, tremendous nightmares because I had to dig deep into some really dark elements of personal evil and biblical evil, and I hated the nightmares. But the fact that this game inspired such deep and horrific imagery in my mind, which already has some deep and horrific imagery in it, this is a powerful book. It is a powerful role-playing tool. It's a lot of fun and maybe just a little bit dangerous, and that marks it as one of my favorites. Let's see, 9, 8, 10, 9, 8. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, also by Palladium. It uses the same basic system as Rifts, so it is playable. But why is this different from Rifts? Why is this more playable than a game with the same system? Because of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I own a couple of copies of the second issue of the first run of TMNT. Eastman and Laird contributed art and material to this book. This is as official as a properties role-playing game can possibly get, and it is clunky and inelegant and beautiful, and they threw together disparate elements from different things that don't really make sense together. You've got medieval Japan weapons and firearms and powered armor every so often. You've got evil scientists and mutants and kung fu and ninjutsu and everything that makes the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, something unique and special and avant-garde. Everything that makes the continuation of that legacy entertaining, fun, bonkers, crazy, is kind of encapsulated in this and the other books in this series. And I love it. I love it. I'll mention this book again in a little bit, probably, unless I forget again, in which case I'll leave a note. 7. Mutants and Masterminds, first edition. When I play a campaign in a system, in a setting that I constantly refer to, that becomes part of my race memory, that becomes part of my consciousness. I played a character named Daniel Grigori. He was the ghost. And he has Gelt's accent because I only do one Romanian accent. And he was a former supervillain. He could phase through matter and walk through walls. He drew the name from, but that wasn't his main power. That was a minor power that he had. His real power was his super charisma. He could convince people of almost anything and was a very charming individual, yes? He turned himself into justice after, during an absinthe-fueled binge, he'd accidentally tried to nuke Nebraska. He missed. He managed to abort the launch, abort the missile launch. But out of contrition, he turned himself into justice, served his time, joined a super team, and that was a fascinating character, and the power progression and how the powers worked and how they worked flawlessly with the OGLD20 rules. I can do a lot of things with this book. I could run a perfect superhero game with this book. I'm looking at other superhero systems at the moment, and if I find one that I like better than this, I will let you know. I've played Champions. I played another couple. There's one further up in my list. But this is by far probably the best of the superhero systems I've ever played in. And still, yeah, I'd run first edition Mutants and Masterminds. I'd run it in a heartbeat. 6. Speaking of superhero games, this is Villains and Vigilantes. I mentioned that Palladium system is playable, but it's not fun. It's functional. The system in this book isn't functional. The system in this book is barely existent. It's a terrible, terrible rule set. It, however, has one of the most bonkers, gonzo character generation systems ever. I once spent a semester at Santa Monica City College. Every minute between classes, I was just sitting in the cafeteria making up Villains and Vigilantes characters for fun. It's all random. It's all completely random. You know, you've got percentile charts of powers, and your statistics all offer up different levels of different things. And Jesus, here, this is how you figure out how much your character can carry. Now that's a carrying capacity formula. You've got to do math and algebra. It's not quite. Fantasy Games Unlimited also published a space game called Space Opera. It's not in either of my lists, but in Space Opera, you actually have to do differential calculus and figure out your planet's axial tilt and know what your stats are. This isn't quite that bad, but they had a penchant for making you do mathematics. Featuring the artwork of the amazing Jeff D, and there's been some legal things about the title and the who owns what in the thing preventing a reprinting, but I believe we're seeing close to a resolution to that. I said to get back to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. One of the best games I ever played in. A friend of mine took Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and adapted the character generation rules from this, particularly coming to generating your random powers to it. And it was insane. It was over the top and cinematic and devastating and amazing, and chemistry. It had the right game master and the right players and the right rules and the right setting. It all just kind of flowed into being the right game at the right time. Played it in college, and it opened my eyes to things, but without the inspiring background of this particular book, that would not have happened. Inspirational, amazing. You can make characters that make no damn sense, but then you have to sit down and make it make sense. And you can. It's just the creative energy that this game brings out in me. It's, yeah. I'm in my top 5 already. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm in my top 5 already. Top 10 lists fly when you're having fun, aren't they? Number 5. Yeah. You had to know it was coming. Call of Cthulhu. Huge Lovecraft fan, and nothing has ever captured the spirit and feeling of the works of Lovecraft like good old-fashioned Chaosium Call of Cthulhu. I have a book on my bookshelf entitled the Encyclopedia Cthulhania, which is as complete a listing of elements of Lovecraftian mythos as you're ever going to find. People, places, things. And a lot of the material in that is based on on material from and around this game, and it is inspiring and nightmare-inducing. And if you've been watching my videos, you know some of the best stories I've ever had come up in my role-playing games have come up from games of Call of Cthulhu in this or another edition. And you buy real estate in an intellectual property when you play a role-playing game there. You put your foot down in it, walk around, talk to the people, kick the tires. And this is the worst possible real estate that you can buy, but it is so amazing to spend time there. Number 4, West End D6 Star Wars role-playing game. I've played it in other systems. I've played it in mine. D20 and Saga Edition. Haven't played the Fantasy Flight Edition and don't intend to, because I don't like special dice when I've got perfectly good dice sitting right there on my dice tray. An entry-level game. Simple, easy, anyone can play it. Carries the spirit of the intellectual property beautifully. You play this, you're in the universe. You play this, you're in an expanded universe, so to speak, and you will contribute to it. A good game of Star Wars placed properly within the canon of the movies, before, after, or someplace just right in the middle, and you feel like, you go see a movie and it's like, oh, I've been there. I've been there, done that. That's not how I would have handled it, but hey. Some of my favorite gaming stories, again, Star Wars based. And, yeah. Warm, fuzzy feelings of this book and the game that it has inspired. Number 3. Mage the Ascension, 2nd edition. This was the heyday of Mage. The 1st edition was good, but it needed a little clarification. The clarifications came here. 3rd edition, they dumbed down and toned down some of it, and, well, they gave the product line to people who didn't like mages very much, and it showed. This is not a standard role-playing game. This is not a I kick down the door, kill the monster, and loot the room game. This is reality is in danger, and maybe you're endangering it, but it is certainly partially your responsibility to do something about, and it is malleable, and it has a certain amount of give to it. And a mage is someone who can tweak it, bend it, maybe break it. It's high concept. It has a lot of support behind it. The worlds and characters of Mage is amazing. Werewolf in these editions, the first 3. Werewolf, the Apocalypse. Vampire, the Requiem. Mage, the Ascension. Werewolves got their Apocalypse. Vampires got their Requiem. It all ended. Mages never got their Ascension. They were cheated out of the destiny that they had been moving for the entire run of this game line. I didn't like that very much, and 4th edition did nothing to really soothe that problem. Of course, I've gone back and fixed that in campaigns as a player, as a game master. You don't play any games of Mage. Again, nothing boring. There are good mage games, there are bad mage games. They're properly run, improperly run, but once you start putting these concepts under your belt, you never think about any game the same way. You never think about reality quite the same way. Thought-provoking. It makes it one of my favorite games of all time. Number 2. I've got 2 books here, and I'm arguing with myself over which one to bring up next. Number 2. Cyberpunk 2020 by Artel Games. Again, you may have seen this one coming because I have gushed about this damn thing long and hard in the past. Young role player attending conventions, first got, I've played a bunch of different stuff, but it's been 1 or 2 systems. I played D&D and Talislanta and a bunch of GURPS and D6 Star Wars, but I get to my first convention in California, in Los Angeles, and they're playing this in open gaming. You meet a few people who really get it, and you are hooked. And it's a little scary, considering how society has gone. Oh, there's a bunch of stuff in here that did not hit the mark as far as where technology would go. We don't have a virtual reality consensus of how the network operates. Now we've got Chrome. We don't have cell phones that are still yay big and are only good for phone calls, or we don't have wearable personal computers that strap across our wrists, and it's all part of the phone these days. You don't hack a system by becoming a net icon. We don't have neural interface between the brain and mechanical prosthesis yet. I mean, actually are getting pretty darn close to that. And in some ways, that's coming pretty close. And then, of course, there's a whole sociological thing where corporations have so infiltrated society and the government that they're essentially governments in and of themselves, and have dehumanized most people to where they're just cogs in the machine and easily digested and spit out or used up. Loyalty to employees is a thing of the past, and it's all bottom line. Yeah, I wonder how things are going in the real world when it comes to that. Gunfights, cyborgs, cyborg gunfights, net running, fighting the system, running on the edge. Great character generation system. The life path system, which started in another Artel property and has continued through here. The cyberware system is awesome, and if you have some of the expansions, the Chrome books are amazing. And the artwork is evocative, and I've mentioned a later edition in a previous video, and nah, this is my Cyberpunk. This is my Cyberpunk. There's another edition that's going to be Cyberpunk 2076. There's a computer game by the people who made The Witcher, and a role-playing game meant to come out to back that up and support it. And I hope it comes anywhere near this, because this is my jam. Oh, I might have to run this at some point in time. Number 1. I've been role-playing for a very long time. I was 12 when I got White Box D&D. 12 or 13 when I picked up Traveler. And then on a trip out to visit my family in California, because I lived in the Midwest at the time, taken to a store called Gamesmanship at Costa Mesa Mall. It no longer exists. I picked up a game that changed my life. This is not that edition. I don't think I've got my first edition of it anywhere because it's unrecognizable. If it still exists, it's falling apart, and I really need to bind it in something. This is the most recent edition that I have. Mecton Zeta in this case, by Zorian Games, makers of Cyberpunk. This is the advanced technical manual, Mecton Zeta Plus. The role-playing game itself is where you have all the character mechanics and character generation and game role material and whatnot is a separate book. This is the book of how to, the advanced book of how to make mecha for the end. One of my great goals in life is to write the Victory System mecha book, and the secondary goal is I want it to be this, but I can't make it this. You know, one of the most perfect mecha systems ever to come out has been done, and now I need to not compete with it necessarily, but I need to do one that does it, but not like this, because I can't do this over again. Mecton will always be one of my first loves. First real loves. The first one that reached down deep inside and grabbed that part of me that had been watching anime since it was Japanese animation on Channel 52 in Los Angeles. And it was all Super Robo shows. And yeah, you can do Super Robo stuff in this. You can do hardcore Gundam stuff in this. You can do Voltron, Transformers. It's then I reached into that part of me that had latched onto Super Robos during a time of my life when I was not happy. When I'd been taken away from California, lived in Missouri, not adapting well to the Midwest, and I didn't have my Super Robo shows anymore, not until years later when they followed me. But I still had them in my mind. They were my imaginary playmates and the playground of my imagination, and now I had rules. Now I could roll dice. Now I could build them on paper and imagine them and draw them, and it was glorious. Still is. Well, that is my top 10 with 5 honorable mentions. But this is one of my lists. It is a +1 top 10 list of my top favorite role-playing games. So here's where I engage in just a little shameless self-promotion. My +1 favorite top 10 role-playing game is the Victory System. This is a system that I wrote with my partner Victor Gibson. And it is my favorite game, not simply because I wrote it, but because there's a little bit of absolutely every single one of the games that I have mentioned in it. There is a inspiration from many different sources. It is the language in which I imagine. It is meant to be something that anyone can use to play the games that they want to play. But if you are using the Victory System, you are playing the way I see things. It contains my sensibilities and my desires, the feeling that I want to have when I'm rolling dice. And I would be lying if I didn't say it's one of my favorite role-playing experiences. I play an awful lot of Victory System, by necessity and by choice. And people around me seem to enjoy the Victory System too, for its flow and its options and its fluidity and its fun. Well, that is my top 10 +1. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't enjoy the video, go ahead and give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you have your own favorites that you'd like to share, or have any questions or comments about the games that I may have shared, or you have your own stories about some of the titles that I might have mentioned, please leave me a comment. I love getting comments. You'll love leaving me a comment. You want to see these videos as soon as they come out, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Larger subscription that I've got, the more reach I have in YouTube land, and I'd like to get the number up there. Share the videos if you don't mind. Spread it out. If you really dug the video and you'd like to contribute to future videos and more stuff and more role-playing products from yours truly typing, feel free to hit me up on my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/DeCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely everything helps and drives me forward. Better videos, better equipment. I'm getting close to that part where I get to do fight choreography and do some more Uncle Drac material, and maybe back it up with a book or two. In the meantime, thank you very much for sharing me with this journey. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me, and I'll see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.